He was the victim. A morning of March 2008, in Guadalajara, the smell of coffee of olla mingled with the bad odor of the campanas of the Sacred Heart Church, where the Hernandez family occupied, every Sunday, the third bench on the right. A family that, in the eyes of all, was the portrait of harmony. Rafael, 45, admired master carpenter in the Santa Cecilia neighborhood, Maria Elena, 38, who sold tamales in the mornings, and Mateo, a 6-year-old boy, green-eyed blonde, an intriguing contrast with his parents' dark traits. But that morning, while Maria Elena prepared breakfast in the small kitchen of blue tiles, something would change forever. Mateo appeared at the door, barefoot, pajama, with a serious expression that had been bothered her for a long time. It was not normal for such a small child to carry such a deep look, so full of knowledge that he should not have. "Mom," he said in his thin voice, but there was something different in tone, something that made Maria Elena stop moving the eggs. "I need to tell you something about Dad." She turned slowly, feeling a shiver through her spine. In Mateo's eyes, there was a seriousness that did not match his age. "What is it, my love?" he asked, trying to disguise his restlessness. Mateo approached, climbed into a wooden chair, and settled like an adult about to reveal a secret that he didn't want to keep anymore. "Mom, I've been someone else. I was called Eduardo Ruiz. And Dad, he killed me." Maria Elena's heart stopped. The skillet slipped from his hands, hitting the mosaic floor with a crash that echoed through the neighborhood. "What do you mean, son? What are you saying?" Mateo's green eyes filled with tears, but his voice remained firm, as if he had expected years for that moment. It was October 15, 1996. I left work at the Aguila textile factory, near the San Juan Market of Dios. I was taking my fortnight salary, about 800 pesos. He paused, wiping a tear. Dad followed me to Independencia Street, pointed a pistol for me and asked for the money. Maria Elena held the edge of the table, feeling her legs weakened. "This cannot be true, my son." "Yes, mother. I gave my wallet, but he shot it anyway." Mateo pointed at his chest, right on his heart. It hurt a lot, but what hurt the most was to see his eyes. The same as he has today, only full of hatred. At that moment, Rafael's heavy steps echoed through the hallway. Maria Elena and Mateo were silent, as if they had been caught in the act. "What was this noise?" asked Rafael, entering the kitchen with his white shirt and jeans, ready for another day of work. "I dropped the frying pan," lied Maria Elena, looking at her husband with a mix of fear and revulsion. Rafael approached Mateo and messed up his hair with love. "And you, champion, woke up any time soon?" Mateo stiffened but managed to sketch a weak smile. "Nothing, Dad, just talking to Mom." But Maria Elena noticed something that froze her inside. In her son's eyes, there was a genuine terror, the kind of fear that only arises when recognizing who has already taken her life. After Rafael went out for work, whistling a song by Vicente Fernandez as always, Maria Elena sat at the kitchen table with trembling hands as she served a glass of hot chocolate for Mateo. "Tell me more about Eduardo," he said softly after making sure they were alone. The boy took a sip, leaving a foam mustache that cleaned with Superman's pajamas mango. Eduardo Ruiz was 29 years old. He worked on the night shift at the factory because he paid more. He lived alone in a little room near the Independence sidewalk. Mateo closed his eyes, as if revived every detail. "I liked to read newspaper and always bought mint gum at your Aurelio's Vendimia." Maria Elena felt a chill. Those details were too accurate for a child's imagination. "And how do you know it was Dad?" "Because when I woke up in heaven, I could see everything. I saw him take my wallet and run through the alley behind Pharmacy San Rafael. I saw him hide the pistol inside a plastic bag and bury under a hose." Mateo paused, playing with the sweet bread crumbs on the plate. "I also saw that it was not the first time, Mother. He had already done this to other people." The chocolate was dark in the mouth of Maria Elena. 12 years married to R.A. Fael. 12 years beside a man she thought she met, a husband who went to mass, helped the neighbors, brought flowers every Friday. Why did you never tell me that before? Mateo's eyes filled with a sadness that was not a child. I was afraid, Mother. When I was a baby and started to remember, I tried to tell you, but only cry came out. Then, when I learned to speak, I was afraid that he hurt me again. Maria Elena hugged him, feeling the small body tremble. But Mother, Mateo continued, his voice embargoed, in heaven, they said I had to go back. That my mission was to be born as his son so that justice one day was done. That afternoon, as Mateo slept, Maria Elena took an old notebook where she wrote the tamales accounts. With a trembling hand, he began to record every word of his son, Aguila Textile Factory. San Juan Market of Dios. October 15, 1996. Eduardo Ruiz, 29 years old. 800 weights. Independence Street. Alley behind Pharmacy San Rafael. Pistol buried under a hose. While writing, something stopped her. Rafael had entered her life in November 1996. She worked in a tortillery in the center when he appeared, saying she came from Michoacán, who had lost her family in an accident and wanted to start over in Guadalajara. Now, 12 years later, that fresh start gained a terrifying meaning. That night, during dinner, Maria Elena watched Rafael with other eyes. He noticed how his heated hands cut the meat with surgical precision. Like her eyes, which she had always judged kind, avoided Mateo's gaze. And above all, he noticed how fear on his son's face was the same as, perhaps Eduardo Ruiz had felt on the last night of his life. I find it in front of the cold pipe of a .38 pistol, its opaque metal reflecting the shaking light that entered the dirty window of the taller. The weight of the object in his hands was unbearable not by the metal itself, but from what he represented, 12 years of lies, 3 reaped lives, a son marked by violence even before he was born. Raphael's fingerprints were still there, printed on the worn wicker, as if the past refused to be erased. Maria Elena smelled the old gunpowder, as if the air around the weapon kept the echo of the shots that had torn Guadalajara night years ago. Mateo, standing next to him, didn't cry. Her green eyes, identical to Eduardo's in photographs she had never seen, shone with a determination that did not belong to a child. It is she, Mommy, confirmed, as if read your thoughts. Elle misma Coney. She didn't let him finish the sentence. With a sudden movement, she re-emptivated the pistol on the blue cloth and hid it under her shirt, feeling the metal burns her skin like embers. Come on, whispered, pulling Mateo by the hand. Let's tend that urnos before El Vuelva. The street was empty, the April sun fell vertically over the cracked asphalt of the neighborhood. Maria Elena walked fast, almost dragging her son, fixed eyes on the bus that approached the corner stop. Adonde come on, Mommy? Mateo asked, stumbled to accompany his hasty step. Al centro, she answered, her voice firm despite the tremor in her hands. Primero a la Superlia. Después. We will see. But when they climbed on the bus, with the pistol hidden in the shopping bag between tortilla packages and a cloth package with cold tamales, Maria Elena knew there was no later that did not involve blood. Rafael was not the kind of man who would accept to be delivered without a fight. And she, who had been her obedient shadow for 12 years, now carried in her hands not only a weapon, but the power to destroy it or to be destroyed by him. The bus engine roared as Maria Elena looked through the dirty window, watching her house walking away, the peeled walls, the rusty metal gate, where she had buried her peace dreams alongside a killer. Mateo squeezed his hand, as if the abyss that opened ahead. In Mito lied, she lied, passing her fingers through her son's hair. But fear had already settled in his bones, mixed with a rage so pure that he burned more than the noon. When the bus folded the corner, Maria Elena closed her eyes and prayed not for forgiveness, not for mercy, but for the strength to do what had to be done. Because that afternoon, in Guadalajara, the justice would not arrive by. You are lay. I would check Pelas Soft. Doing an investigation into missing from the 90s for a church group, which sought to close wounds with prayers and memorials. But when Amparo took a worn photo from Eduardo, the same face that he saw every morning in Mateo's mirror, only with more years and a scar in the eyebrow, the words were stuck in his throat like spines. He had a brand here, Amparo murmured, touching the right temple. She was made as a child when she fell from a tree. He always said she was her lucky star. Maria Elena felt that the air thickened, that the walls of that humble room closed on it. The same scar that Mateo hid under El Fleco, the same that Raphael had told him that it was by birth. Lie. Everything had been a lie. Sego, Amparo's voice took her out of the abyss, is okay? You are pale as death. Yes. No. Never again. Maria Elena rose suddenly, sweaty hands around the vessel of atoll that Amparo had offered him. Excuse me, I have to go. But before leaving, he stopped at the door, turned with his eyes burning. Taro, his brother had children? The woman shook her head, confused. No, he never married. He said that he first wanted to give his parents a decent life. Because someone stole that chance. Because right now, a child with his same green eyes and his very lucky star in the temple sleeps in a bed that is not his, with a surname that does not belong to him. Maria Elena ran through the streets of Mesquitan as if the devil persecuted her. It did not go to the market. It didn't go home. He went directly to the center police station, where a gray-bug and tired gaze officer received her with a "What did I help her, madam?" That rang mockery. I need to report a crime, he said, the firm voice despite the tremor in his legs. Not 1. 5. The police raised his eyebrow, but before he could open his mouth, Maria Elena hit the table with the palm of her hand. On the counter, he deployed the copies of the newspapers that he had printed on a stationery, the notes of Eduardo, Esperanza, Patricio, and the two that still failed to confirm. Ruben Castellanos. Fernanda Aguirre. My husband is a murderer, he said, every syllable a clove in the coffin of his ancient life. And I have evidence. The officer lay in his chair, crossing his arms. Miss this seems complicated. Do you have witnesses? Confession? Something more than newspaper cuts? Maria Elena breathed deeply. Then she took the gun wrapped in a kitchen rag, oxide spots marking the place where Raphael had hidden for years. The silence at the station was so dense that it could be cut with a knife. This, he said, pointing to the weapon with a finger that didn't tremble, he killed those 5 people. And my 9-year-old son can describe each of those crimes as if he had seen them. The police paid. While waiting for a detective to arrive, Maria Elena went out to the backyard of the station, where Mateo, who had insisted on accompanying her, played with a stone, throwing her against the wall again and again. He bent against him, taking his face in his hands. Son, are you sure you want to do this? If we tell the truth, your life will change forever. Matthew dropped the stone. His eyes, identical to those of Eduardo in the photo, shone with a wisdom that did not correspond to his age. Mommy changed. The day Dad told me about Mr. Ruiz and told me that I was the only one who knew it. That if I said it, I would kill both of us. The world stopped. That? Mateo nodded, serious as a judge. He doesn't know that I remember everything. From before birth. Since when he? The boy paused, looking for the words, he put me inside you. Maria Elena felt that the ground opened under her feet. They were not just 5 victims. It was her. It was his body, used as a grave to hide a crime. When the detective went out to look for them, he found Maria Elena standing, with tight fists and a steel determination in her eyes. Mateo, next to him, held his hand without fear. I want to make a formal statement, he announced. And I need protection for my son. Already. The only thing that has given me a hint of redemption in this rotten life, Raphael's voice broke like glass under the weight of his own words. But now I understand why fate punished me like this. Why gave me a Hidge. Or that I was really my victim. Why let me love a woman whose body I used as a grave? Maria Elena did not go back. He didn't look away. In his eyes a mixture of pain and coldness burned that Raphael had never seen in her. It is not destiny, Raphael. It's you. You shit your own grave with each bullet, with each lie, with every night you went home as if nothing had happened. And now, when the truth reaches you, there is no forgiveness that is worth it. There are no tears that have so much blood. Matthew, no. Eduardo advanced another step. His voice was no longer that of a child, but that of a man who had waited decades to close the circle. Tell me one thing, Raphael, he explained, with a calm that froze more than any shout. When you buried me inside Maria Elena, when you used her body to hide what you had done, did you ever think the child who was born from there would be me? What life would return your crime involved in diapers? Raphael covered his face with his hands, but there was no escape. The walls of the house, which for years had kept their secrets, now seemed to close on it like a coffin. I never knew, he groaned. My God, I never knew. Of course, Elena spit his words like poison. Because you never looked beyond your own greed. Even when you got married with me, or when Matteo was born. You just saw what you wanted to see, a normal family, a second chance. But life doesn't work that way. Justice does exist. And today he has come for you. At that moment, the bell of the house sounded like a shot at night. 3 short, urgent touches. The 3 remained motionless, as if the sound had frozen time. The police, Raphael whispered, with a thread of hope in his voice. They have to be them. Someone should have called them. Maria Elena looked at him with disdain. No, Raphael. I called them. Raphael's eyes opened as dishes. The betrayal hit him more strongly than any confession. You, when? This morning. While you were at work, planning how to silence Amparo Ruiz, Elena took her phone out of her pocket and showed it, with the recording still in pause. Every word you have said here is recorded. Each confession. Each name. And Matteo, he turned to his son, to Eduardo, will testify. Raphael collapsed against the wall, the legs no longer held it. For the first time in his life, he understood what it was to be cornered without exit. Outside, the sirens began to howl. They approached. Fast. Maria Elena took Matteo's hand and, together, walked to the door. They didn't look back. It's time for you to pay for what you did to my son, she said, with a voice that didn't admit reply. And all other victims who can no longer speak. When the agents broke into the house minutes later, they found Raphael on the ground, surrounded by the ghosts that had finally reached him. He did not oppose resistance. There was nothing more to say. That night, while the stars watched in silence about Guadalajara, Maria Elena and Matteo Madre and son, victim and justice, sat on the steps of the porch, waiting for dawn. I'm not afraid, Matteo murmured, clenching his hand. Neither, she replied, because for the first time in years, the weight of the truth was no longer his just to load. The sun would come out soon. And with him, a new beginning. The air smelled of dust and disinfectant when the heavy door of the penitentiary center closed behind them with a metallic rumble that resonated as the echo of a past that finally was left behind. Maria Elena breathed deeply, feeling the afternoon sun stroking her face as a reminder that, against all prognosis, there was still light in the world. Beside him, Matteo walked in silence, with that serenity that only those who have touched the deepest pain and transcended them can possess. I don't think I see him again, she murmured, more to herself than for her son. It is not necessary, Matthew replied, adjusting his backpack with the books of the school he was carrying. He already received what he needed. And you? Did you receive what you were looking for? The question was suspended in the air between them, but it was not necessary to pronounce it. Maria Elena knew it, her son had not gone there for revenge, even for justice. It had gone to close the cycle. So that Rafael Hernandez, in his last months of life, knew the real weight of his acts not through the bars of a cell, but through the eyes of who had been his victim and then his son. So that, at least once, he felt the pain he had sown. The way back home was long. Urban trucks were crowded, October's sticky heat was leaked through open windows, and the smell of gasoline and street food mixed with the sweat of passengers. Maria Elena watched Matteo, who looked out the window with an expression that was neither sadness nor joy, but something deeper, peace. As if, by forgiving, he had released not only Raphael, but also himself. "Do you think he will?" she finally asked, breaking the silence. "Do you think you will write those letters?" Matteo nodded without hesitation. He needs to do it. Now he knows that forgiveness is not for us, it is for him. So that I can die without dragging so much darkness. Maria Elena squeezed her lips. There was something in her son's certainty that shocked her. How could a 7-year-old boy understand what many adults cost a lifetime? But then he recalled, Matteo was not just a child. It was Eduardo's echo, the memory of Esperanza, Patricio's shadow. It was the living testimony that sometimes justice was not served in court, but in smaller and human gestures. When they arrived at the Colonia del Fresno, the sky began to dye orange and purple, as if the sunset itself would like to celebrate the end of a chapter. The small house, with desiccated walls and lamina roof, received them with the soup to a noodle that the neighbor, Mrs. Rosa, had left them in the stove. It was little, but it was his. It was a home. While Maria Elena served dinner and spent dishes, Matteo took out a drawing she had made at school. It was a large tree, with deep roots and branches that extended to the sky. On each sheet, I had written a name, Eduardo. Hope. Patrician. The others. "What is this, my love?" she asked, with a broken voice. "A tree of memory," he explained, placing the drawing on the table carefully. "So that we do not forget them. But also to grow with us." Maria Elena hugged him strongly, feeling how her son's little body trembled slightly, not for fear, but for the intensity of everything she had inside. At that time, he knew that, although the world had taken them so much, he had also given them something extraordinary, the opportunity to heal not only their own wounds, but those of others. Of turning pain into something that, against all logic, could flourish. Outside, the wind rocked the leaves of the patio trees, as if the nature itself whispered that, after the storm, the calm always comes. And in that humble house, between mud dishes and walls that kept secrets, a mother and her son began to write, without knowing it, the first chapter of a new story. One in which, finally, the light weighed more than the shadows. When leaving the cold walls of the prison, Matteo walked in silence with his mother, his steps marking the rhythm of goodbye that did not need words. "Are you okay, son?" Maria Elena asked, with that voice that only a mother knows how to modulate between concern and hope. "Yes, Mommy," he replied, and this time it was not a sigh, but a certainty. "Now I'm fine." She looked at him, looking for some shadow of the past in her green eyes, but only found clarity. "You no longer have nightmares?" Matteo shook his head, as if doing so erased the last vestiges of a closed chapter. "Eduardo already went to heaven forever," he said, with the quiet wisdom of who has accepted a legacy without loading his weight. "Now I'm just Matteo, your son who loves you a lot." Maria Elena hugged him right there, at the truck stop, under a sky that seemed wider after so much cloudy time. The vehicle arrived with their family roar, taking them back to a home that no longer smelled of fear, but for freshly baked bread and laughing that resonated in the runners. 2 years later, the news came as a whisper that became a shout. Rafael Hernandez had died in the nursing of the prison, but not before honoring his word. With trembling letters and a remorse that could no longer redeem it, he wrote letters to each family, confessing truths that only the dead knew. He pointed out the wasteland near Santa Anita where Patricio Vega lying for a decade. Your daughter, now of D.O.'s years, he could finally bury his father, close a wound that bled in silence. Matteo, at 9 years old, ran after a ball in the neighborhood, dreaming of being veterinarian and healing animals as if every life saved were an act of poetic justice. The nights no longer woke him up with drowned shouts, but with strange dreams, a place of golden light where souls did not cry, but rested. Maria Elena, meanwhile, had found in Joaquin, a school teacher of Colossus and generous heart, a love that did not erase the past, but transformed it into something lighter. Together they had Sophia, a girl with contagious laughter who idolized her older brother and her stories of when the world was magical. One night, while Maria Elena rocked Sophia in the crib, heard Mateo's voice leaking for the slit of her door. He approached without making noise and found him standing in front of the window, with his eyes fixed in the stars, as if talking with someone beyond the glass. "Thanks, Eduardo," whispered. "Thank you for letting me live my own life." She smiled, backed away without being seen, and kept that moment in the place where miracles that have no explanation are archived. Because some stories do not end with a happy forever or a sad end, but with a balance that only life in their capricious wisdom knows how to weave. Sometimes justice does not arrive with trumpets or sentences, but with the green eyes of a child who remembers what he never lived and loves with the intensity of those who have seen the other side. And perhaps that is the most beautiful mystery, that redemption is not always a destination, but a gift that is chosen to accept. If this story resonated in you, if you have ever felt that chance or something else intertwined your life with echoes of other stalks, let us know. Do you think the soul chooses to return? Or that there are wounds that only time, and perhaps a little magic, can they heal? Share your reflection, because in each comment it beats the possibility that we are not alone in these questions. And if you move the stories that challenge the limits of the possible, subscribe. Because reality, sometimes, is the most extraordinary story that has never been told.